The Mercedes-AMG S63 Coupe is the best GT car in the world right now. Or the Bentley Continental GT V8 is the best GT car in the world right now. By the end of this video, we'll all know which one it is.
Before we get stuck in, have you subscribed to the CarGurus YouTube channel yet? We post new and used car reviews, helping you work out which car is right for you. Go on, tap that subscribe button. GT cars aren't supercars or even sports coupes, they are Grand Tourers, a performance car genus in its own right. More than any other kind of car, they combine luxury, performance, long-distance refinement, and dynamic ability. You don't drive a world-class Grand Tourer from one point to another. No, you set off and then you arrive.
Great GT cars shrink long distances so that you're hardly aware you've been at the wheel for hours on end. And in that sense, the S63 Coupe has been the master for several years.
At its heart is the same 4-litre twin-turbo V8 that you'll find right across the Mercedes-AMG range. Here it develops 604 brake horsepower and a massive 664 pound-foot of torque. The S63 weighs 2,065 kilograms. Even so, it'll reach 62 miles per hour in 4.2 seconds and crash into its speed limiter at 155.
Today the S63 goes up against not the fastest Continental GT, but probably the best. The version you'll want for showing off to your mates is the range-topping model with the W12 engine. But today we've got the entry-level V8 version. It's not quite as powerful as the W12, but the car is lighter and it is better to drive.
And it isn't exactly short on firepower. The 4-litre twin-turbo V8 is good for 542 brake horsepower and 568 pound-foot of torque. The V8 model is 50 kilograms lighter than the W12, which goes some way to offsetting the 90 brake horsepower deficit. The Bentley is four-wheel drive, where the Mercedes is rear-driven only. Despite being heavier, the Continental GT is therefore quicker to 62 miles per hour, hitting that speed in 4 seconds flat. It'll run on to 198. While the S63 starts from £132,000, the Continental GT is pricier still at £148,800.
So the Bentley is almost £17,000 more expensive than this Mercedes. But when you sit in the S63, it's hard to imagine any car feeling like a higher quality piece of kit. The cabin is just gorgeous. It's like something you'd expect to find on a super yacht. The material quality is exceptional, the build quality as well. And these seats, they're just like big squidgy armchairs. They're so comfortable. All of that stuff is very important in a GT car.
Taller passengers will fit in the rear seats, but they won't thank you for it. They're best left for children. Boot space is good at 400 litres. Two can easily go away for a week without worrying about packing light.
Amazingly, I think the Bentley has got an even better cabin than the Mercedes. Everything from the wood veneer to the stitching and the leather, it all feels like it's been put together by skilled artisans, and these plungers here as well. You just get this impression of hand-built quality, and it's got a rotating infotainment display.
Again, the Bentley's rear seats are usable, but only children will get comfortable back there. At 358 litres, the Bentley's boot is a little smaller than the Mercedes, but it's still useful.
Now then, what is it that's made this S63 the definitive Grand Tourer of the last few years? It's all about how comfortable it is to drive, the ride quality, serene, the noise suppression, the way it isolates wind and road noise. It's just extraordinary. The car sits on air suspension as standard, and the ride is just beautifully composed, beautifully controlled as well. It's just so calm and supple. It smothers the road surface. And all of that just means that you're so isolated from the fact that you're charging along a road at 60 or 70 miles per hour. And it all just means that you sit here in this lovely, comfy armchair, more comfortable, more relaxed than you would be in your own living room.
With more than 600 brake horsepower, the S63 is fast by any measure. But what really matters in a Grand Tourer is that the engine returns huge speed without seeming like it's trying.
And in that sense, the S63's powertrain is just about spot on. You just squeeze the throttle a little bit and the car surges forwards on this enormous wave of torque. And even when you dig into the throttle pedal travel, you don't get uncouth, sort of exaggerated engine noise. You just get this muted, cultured woofle from the exhaust. It's spot on. It's a cold day today, only about 4 degrees. The roads are wet and we've got 660 something pounds-foot of torque going through the rear wheels. So the rear axle is struggling to deal with all the torque that the engine's got to throw at it on a day like today. It makes it a little bit of a wild ride. In the dry, traction's actually really good. Gearbox, meanwhile, smooth and then quick and snappy when you've got it in manual mode. Works really well.
Over very long distances, the S63 is imperious. It's even pretty handy when you stick it into a few bends.
Okay, so it's no driver's car, but when you stick it into a few bends, it actually holds together really nicely. It's not engaging, the steering is remote, it feels quite heavy in direction changes, but it's certainly not a suet pudding of a car. In fact, body control is really good. There's bundles of grip, at least on a dry road, and the steering is accurate enough that you can position it with confidence. It all just means that on the right kind of road, a dry, flowing, more open road rather than a really tight, twisty one, it holds together really well and you can carry really good speed through a sequence of bends.
The Mercedes ticks all the Grand Tourer boxes I outlined earlier on. How on earth is the Bentley going to get anywhere near it?
Well, it also rides beautifully well. Again, air suspension as standard. The ride in this Bentley is actually slightly more connected than it is in the Mercedes, and the car feels heavier, so it doesn't iron out the road surface quite like the S63 does, but in overall terms, the ride is exceptional in this car. There are times where you'll drive over, say, a ridge in the road and the body will rattle just a little bit. You don't get that in the Mercedes. So the Bentley, it doesn't quite glide like the S63 does. It's still very comfortable. And then you've also got exceptionally good wind and road noise suppression. So you'll be driving along the motorway thinking you're doing 70 miles an hour. You'll look down and realize that you're doing quite a lot more. Again, this is a car that isolates you from the process of driving, which is what makes being on the road so relaxing.
As well as comfort mode, the Continental GT also has a sport mode and the immodestly named Bentley mode, a sort of balance setting.
That's the default driving mode. The V8 engine is so subdued in normal driving, but when you tickle the throttle pedal just a little bit, you hear that bassy V8 rumble and you're reminded that it's there. I really like that. And then you stick it into the sport driving mode, and that's when you start to realize just how much performance there is. This car is so brisk in a straight line, just a little bit of throttle pedal travel sends the car surging forward, and you just think, why would you ever need the extra performance that you get from the W12? You just don't miss it. And the gearbox, very similar to the Mercedes transmission, very, very smooth in normal driving. Then when you take control using these paddles yourself, it's very sharp and snappy and responsive.
The previous Continental GT was fast as well, but it was never a particularly keen steer. It always seemed reluctant when you took it by the scruff.
This latest version is leaps and bounds ahead in that respect. Actually, it's incredible how keen and agile such a big and heavy GT car can feel on windy roads. It's kind of taking me by surprise. And tellingly, when you drive it back to back with that Mercedes, this Bentley just feels so much sharper, so much more agile and responsive. It's got far more connected steering, and beyond simple traction, grip and stability, there's also a degree of throttle adjustability to it. There's a keen neutral balance. All that stuff that makes a car not just sort of capable along a flowing road, but also quite fun to drive.
Like the S63, the Continental GT compresses distances. You start driving, then you seem to arrive at your destination.
Both of these cars then are supreme Grand Tourers. The question is, which one does it better? It's the Bentley. It's a match for the Mercedes as a long distance cruiser, but then it's more sporty to drive and it's got the better cabin. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to comment below and let us know which car you prefer, the Mercedes-AMG or the Bentley. And remember as well to subscribe to the Car Gurus YouTube channel. Finally, head to cargurus.co.uk where you'll find a great deal on your next used car from a top-rated dealer.